Hello and welcome back to the One United podcast. I'm joined as ever by Henry. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, yeah. Here,
Just
there, and everywhere at the moment, man. Not gonna lie, but
there you
yeah.
go. That means it's going to be a quality episode of Henry doing his best El Chingrito's impression or whatever it's called. But yeah, delighted to be joined by a brand new guest. Hopefully, the first of many appearances on the channel. We're joined by Charlie, obviously from All For United and internationally renowned thread maker on Twitter. So how you doing, mate?
All good, thanks. Henry and James, thanks a lot for having me on, by the way.
It's brilliant to have you. It's brilliant to have you. So, as the title suggests, obviously this week's news, barring a pretty poor result at the weekend, this week's big news is obviously surrounding Saul. Now, I don't think there's anything concrete quite yet. I don't think the move's particularly imminent, but it seems the most likely out of the midfielders that we want and need. So we're going to talk about it. So, obviously, the big worry with getting a midfielder in was that we were going to need to sell to buy. Now, we'll start by saying it looks like this is going to be a loan deal with sort of an obligation to buy. So just taking whether you like the transfer of the player out of the equation, Charlie, I'll come to you first. Does this represent sort of smart business by United getting a midfielder in on loan so they don't have to pay that transfer fee?
I'm not so sure. I think the CDM or the midfielder, whatever you want to call it, I think that should have been the first signing. Obviously, Sancho should have been done last year. I know we've obviously saved a bit of money on it, but I think a lot of people suggest if we got Sancho last year, obviously when Rashford got injured, we would have been able to use Sancho, and we may have even won. Who knows? In hindsight, we might have won the Europa League. We might have got further in the cups, etc. But yeah, I don't really buy it. I just think a CDM should have been more of a priority earlier on in the window. And I think we all knew it was sort of going to come down to the last week or so, and we're going to sort of see what happens. But yeah, I would do the loan deal with said obligation to buy. I'd do that. I just don't know whether I just don't know whether the club will act and do it. I just don't know. We sort of faff about. I don't know whether we've got enough time. It sort of seems to take us weeks and weeks to sort things out. But yeah, I certainly would want it to happen. I just think that whenever we haven't got a sort of midfielder here, we probably will struggle to challenge for the title. But also, I think without a midfielder, if we don't sign one, there will be a lot of excuses at times. And I say that because I think a lot of problems that we have, for me, are coaching issues. And obviously on All For United, people have said people think it's more of a player issue. I think more or less everybody agrees on that, particularly Stu agreed on that. But I think it's more of a coaching issue. I think even when we do sign a CDM, I think we'll struggle to challenge just because I think our system isn't good enough. But I think a CDM will definitely help. I'm not saying it won't help. I think it'll definitely help. So I would be all over that Sal deal, and hopefully we can get it over the line.
Yeah, well, I'll ask you a similar sort of question then, Henry. Obviously, regardless of whether you like Saul as a player or not, do you think this sort of resembles smart business in not having to pay a big transfer fee for him this year?
It resembles Glazer business. Yeah, it resembles Glazer business. You know, I can't. Honestly, I'm struggling at the moment. I really am. I like the idea of getting a midfielder. We all want a midfielder. But oh god, this is just a mess again. We're waiting till the last minute to do these deals yet again. I like the idea of a midfielder. I want a midfielder. I'd take Sal, but he's more of an 8. He can play DM because and I've alluded to this a couple of times and people have gone, it's a bit of a weak argument, but you don't play in a Diego Simeone side if you can't defend. You just don't do it. He doesn't play João Felix, and they signed him for 130 million. So, you've got to be smart enough to be capable at defending, and he's playing left back at the moment as well. So it's not as though he's not capable when it comes to the defensive side of things. But this is just, honestly, this is typical old United. We should have done a DM earlier in the window. Charlie's 100% right. We should have done it earlier. We faffed around. We messed around. We got the Sancho deal done a bit late. The Varane deal done a little bit late. And now we're waiting until the last minute to get another deal done. This is just, honestly, we all thought things had changed when Murto and Fletcher in charge of recruitment, etc. But clearly not a lot's happened. The club's still the same, and the fact that we're having to go for a loan deal, having only spent. By the way, guys, Sancho deal, that's last year's money. That's not this year's money. The Varane deal is this year's money. That's, we spent essentially 34 million. Obviously, you're not going to include add-ons because, you never know what the player's going to achieve at the club. But 34 million. And they're still waiting on their little dividend check in September, which they'll get. They'll get their 25 million. So, yes, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. As always with Manchester United, we think we've got a fantastic chance of going and challenging for the title, going and winning trophies. That is the most important thing for this club. Good football, winning trophies. And we've taken 2 steps forward and we're still stuck with Fred and McTominay in midfield. Like, how is that the solution? Wouldn't the Glazers rather get a little bit more prize money, top up their bank account with that, and spend 20-25 million? You can get Neves for, I'm sure, 25 plus add-ons, maybe 30 plus add-ons. Wolves need the money at the moment. They need to sell to buy, and they want to buy players. So, yeah, honestly, I'm baffled. I'm baffled.
Fair enough. Well, we'll come to alternatives and where he should rank in our priorities a bit later on. But I just wanted to ask you, Charlie. Obviously, you've both mentioned how late on in the window this deal looks like being done. Do you think it sort of has the same feel as sort of the end of last year's transfer window, where we signed Cavani, Telles, Amad Diallo, all sort of in and around deadline day? It was a bit mental, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. Obviously, I think the majority of people, and I can't say I wasn't one of them, obviously was quite negative about the Cavani deal. I just think that I think we all thought that it was sort of a bit of a rush and it was a bit of a panic, and then obviously turned out to be probably arguably our most important player for quite a period of the season. Obviously Bruno would obviously argue, and Shaw would argue with that, of course, and Pogba, but Cavani was massive as well. But yeah, it's always sort of a problem with United. We always faff about. I always feel that we don't know what our targets are until the window starts. So we don't really plan. I always feel like we're not planning. And I feel like even now we should be planning for next summer now. Actually, we should know what we're going to do next summer. We should be planning for the summer after that. We should be planning ahead for what we're going to do. And I feel like with United, we sort of get to the start of the window and we sort of, okay, what are we going to do this summer? And we don't even know what we're going to do before we start. And it always feels like there's just no planning ahead. And yeah, James, it does feel like previous summers, really. We've got people in charge who don't really know what they're doing. It's crazy to say, really. And I agree with Henry on the Murto and Fletcher thing, and I was never really bought by it at all. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done some good things. I think the youth academy has been doing well. I think we've got some good prospects. I think we've got some really good loan deals for those prospects. I think James Garner, obviously for Nottingham Forest, I think that's a good deal for him, despite the unrest there. I think with the manager, I think they've got some problems there. But I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done some good things. But I think at times people need to actually realise we've still got players like Pereira, Jones, we've got Lingard, we've got Dan James is even in question for a lot of people. We've got people sitting about that we know that aren't good enough. And yeah, it doesn't really seem like we've got an idea, and it's not like there's a lack of options either. You've got Neves, Sal, Camavinga, and Bissouma, who are all probably available for sort of a 35 million price. And Jesse Lingard, I don't understand why we can't let him go. I think West Ham said they didn't want to pay. Now they're slightly interested, and now it doesn't look like it's going to happen again. But even get Lingard gone for £15 million, surely West Ham would be interested in that. But Ben Rama's now playing his role. Now he's done very well at the start of the season, so maybe they don't want him anymore. But obviously they've got the Europa League, so they'll want a bigger squad. But yeah, we just can't. We just sort of dilly and dally around, as Henry said. We faff about, and yeah, it does feel like previous summers. And I just feel like on deadline day, we're probably gonna sign somebody, whether it be Harry Winks or somebody like that. I just don't know, but something will happen like that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, there's a good comment that Henry brought up by John, and I think we'll cover that later when we talk about alternatives. But I'll ask you sort of a similar question, Henry. Does it feel like it's a little bit of a panic buy, given that this loan to buy option was probably available all window realistically, and we're only just pursuing it now? Does it feel like there's a sense of panic about that?
I don't think it's panic. I think it's availability, and I think the higher ups in the club, they don't want to spend 35 million now. They see it as it's either a loan deal with an option or an obligation to buy. I think they almost insist on an option just in case things don't go quite according to plan with him, because we've made mistakes in the past like that. We've made so many mistakes when it comes to players that are kind of half disinterested at their clubs and maybe struggling a little bit in terms of form and in terms of relationship with the club and etc. So I think the option to buy would be a smart deal, but I'm still just like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, seriously, in all honesty, and Charlie's right, we could end up getting bloody Winks on deadline day. I'd still take him over Fred and McTominay. Just put that out there right now. I'd still take him. But it's just incredibly frustrating. Again, year in, year out. And this comment is I think this kind of epitomizes what we're talking about, in the sense that we're a little bit desperate, and he's the only available one that we're looking at now. Other clubs, your top European clubs aren't looking at him. I think Barca tried a swap deal at some point with Griezmann and money for Saul and money for Griezmann to come back. That didn't materialise. But he's not going to play central midfield for them. They've got Rodrigo de Paul, who they brought in thinking, it's a ready-made replacement. So at the moment, I'm struggling with this, with our club again. We go through so many emotions throughout the transfer window. We go through the elated. Well, the first of all is the frustrated. Then it's the elated that we've gone and got Sancho. Then it's the highest of the highs that we've gone and got Varane. And then you're back down to earth and realise what the club are actually about when they refuse to pay money for a defensive midfielder. Might add, the one piece that is stopping us from a title challenge. The one piece that is stopping us from a title challenge. You get a Neves in there, you're in the mix with City and Chelsea again. No excuses for the manager. But yet again, it's going to be, Ollie didn't get his defensive midfielder. If we don't do well, it's going to be, he didn't get his defensive midfielder. We'll give him another year. Honestly, just get him the fucking midfielder. Get him the midfielder, and then you'll know exactly what he's about, and you stop faffing around with, loan with option to buy, or just buy someone, for God's sake. And as for West Ham, I couldn't care less about them anymore. They've just gone and forked out like 26 million on Kurt Zouma, but 25 is too steep for Jesse Lingard, someone who got them into Europe last year, and they want 100 million for Declan Rice right now. 100 million. I would walk past their ground. I would see David Gold up in the director's box, and I'd go, knob. You're asking for a ridiculous price for a player that is not worth 100 million pounds. He's not worth that. John says he's worth 65. I'd say if he was Spanish, we get him for 45. But and yeah, again, these comments are you're so correct. He's an upgrade nonetheless. But I'm sorry, I'm not forking out 100 million on Declan Rice. It's ridiculous business. It really is. He is an upgrade, but so frustrating. And again, that's more like the price, is it not? Is it? Would we not get a similar player from Spain or from Germany, Zakaria, who has just gone into the dust? He's not playing as much from the back, but he's more capable.
I think Ruben Neves is probably a similar quality to Declan Rice overall, and he's worth 35 million. So,
but no English tax as well, which is just it's. Ben White costs 50 million. End of story. Don't even negotiate for English players anymore. Don't bother. It's pointless. Again, Saul is similar quality to Rice, I'd say. Different kind of players, but Rice is trying to develop his game going forward, apparently, which is going really well. But yeah, it's another one where we're looking at the players and in terms of quality of passing, probably similar. So yeah, we've got to be smart, but we're so fucking stupid when it comes to the market. Varane is the best deal we've done in like 10 years, and that says it all, really. So yeah, I just give up at times, man. Sorry, I went on a little rant there. I just give up at times.
We're used to it now, mate. Well, don't worry about that. Well, listen, we feel a bit negative around here, so we'll bring some positivity in. I'll come to you first, Charlie. Obviously, you must have done at least one thread on Saul. So if we do bring him in, what would he bring to this starting 11?
Well, he brings, the first thing, he's a very, very versatile player. So he's been playing full back at times for Atletico. He's been playing on the wing at times. Obviously, with a 4-4-2, it's a bit different. So he's more of a wide. He plays obviously a left mid, a more wide midfielder role than obviously our inside forwards, sort of the Rashford, Greenwood roles that they often play. But he can play. He could play across the front three in a 4-2-3-1, and he can play in the middle as a more 6, or he can play as an 8 as well. He's got really impressive stats in the box, in the opposition box. So he's very, very dangerous. I think he's got something like 0.14 non-penalty expected goals and assists a game, which is like a expected goal or assist just over every 6 games or something, I think, which is quite impressive, really, for a central midfield player, especially playing in quite a rigid system in a 4-4-2 Atletico. So he does offer a lot in the opposition box. He's very good at dribbling. He's very good at breaking up opposition players who are dribbling at him. So he's very good at that as well. And his passing stats are not great if you actually look at them. Like Neves' stats are better. But obviously Saul has got experience playing in big. Obviously Neves, I think, played. I can't remember where he used to play Neves, but was it Porto or Sporting?
Yeah, he was a captain of Porto, won it by 18.
Porto.
Captain at 16 at Porto.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so I think he's played in the Champions League a lot of times as well, Neves. But Saul has played in the deeper rounds, sort of the quarter semis, and he's won 2 Europa Leagues and 1 La Liga, obviously last season. So he's obviously got experience as being a winner, being in big games. But yeah, he's a very good dribbler. He's a decent passer. And I think you will see, I think he averages around 1 key pass a game as well, which is very good. And his progressive passing is decent. It's better than sort of a Bissouma type, but it's not as good as Neves. But I believe sort of in Man United system, his progressive passing would go up. I don't think it's a weakness he has. I think it's just the options he has in forward areas at Atletico Madrid are not as good as they would be at United. I think if you look at Neves, obviously we'll probably talk about the Wolves game coming up. I think we will struggle on Sunday. One of our things we need to look out for is Neves' progressive passing, particularly through to Adama Traore, which we'll need to be careful of. And I think with sort of the runs that Rashford, Sancho, Martial, Greenwood, etc., Fernandes, even Pogba, they make, I think that would really suit Saul. So yeah, he's very, very good in the opposition box. But obviously, he's coming in to be a CDM, so his main job is to defend, and he can do that as well. His defensive role, he can do that role very well. But again, it's not as impressive as Neves's stats. But obviously, we can't look all at stats. I think Saul is a more experienced player in big games, in Champions League games. So yeah, I'll be very happy with Saul. I think he brings a lot to the table. He's also 6 foot, so he's not small. Although I thought he was smaller, I did think he was smaller. He's actually 6 foot, so he can win aerial duels. He's not bad at that, although Bissouma's better. So yeah, he brings a lot, and he certainly, as Henry said, he certainly brings more than what we've got at the moment in that position.
Definitely. Do you think then, Henry, by bringing him in, obviously he's not that singular defensive midfielder that we probably would need to offer that defensive stability. So do you think by bringing him in, we are still going to see either one of Fred or McTominay play next to him?
I think so, but it depends on the side we're playing against. I think people think that there's a set system for every game, and that's not the case. I think with if you're playing Norwich, you don't need 2 in there. You just don't. I'm sorry. Who are you going to be up against? Like Lucas Rupp or something? Who gives a shit about them?
Ollie will still find a way to put 2 DMs in against Norwich.
It will still find a way, yeah. But the problem is then, once Rashford gets back fit, you're sacrificing one of Pogba or Rashford. And no. just simply no. You're not. I wouldn't sacrifice either of those just because of their quality, their ability to score goals, and that's the most important thing. Yeah, I think in the bigger games we'll see, if there is a new player. I don't know whether there's going to be, but alongside your McTominay or your Fred, I would rather have someone like that alongside Fred. Like, I'm going to put it out there, and James will go, oh, he has a McTominay agenda. I don't think Scott McTominay is that good of a player, personally. And we saw what Fred's like playing a more box-to-box role for Brazil, in a passing side where he can be winning the ball higher up the pitch, pressing higher, causing more problems. So, yeah, and Fred's one of our top scorers this season, just putting that out there. So, no, but it's one of those where I think we won't see a huge change of system, but I think we'll see a change of mentality where you're able to trust someone in there a little bit more. Fred and McTominay, it's like the Chuckle Brothers in there. And a lot of people will say, I keep seeing people saying they're highly effective in big games. They're highly effective at being shit and getting a draw. Yes, congratulations, well done. You got another draw in a big game. But if you want to have progression, and, I call him Muck Sideways as a little joke, but he does always pass sideways. He can break through the lines. He can use his big, long legs to break through the lines. So give him credit for that. But he does pass sideways a lot. And I think people, they kind of gloss over that. And so, oh, he's homegrown. He's all right. Just give him a bit of a break. He's come through the academy. Fuck off. So I'm absolutely just, yeah. We've got to find a system. We've got to bring someone in that suits the system, but that can play through the lines. They bring in, I don't know, whoever. Davinson Sanchez from Spurs, if he can play through the fucking lines. Seriously, bring someone in who can play through the lines. Not that is another Fred. Not that is another McTominay. Someone that is, capable of playing that position. And Saul is capable of playing that position. We need to unlock him if we get him in. We need to unlock him because at the moment, and I'm going to use a Twitter phrase, which I can't believe I'm going to use, he is playing under a football terrorist, as many Twitter users call Diego Simeone. You sit in a rigid 4-4-2. You wait for sides to come onto you, and you break or you use set pieces to win games with big centre halves. It's the traditional way. It's an effective way, but it's not a pretty way. So Saul has got so much more to his game than what meets the eye at the moment. And under a better manager, well, not better manager, a more attacking manager, in a more attacking side with probably better players, who knows? Who knows?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, the big sort of talking point around him being rumoured to join was sort of, what does that mean for Donny van de Beek? So I'll ask you, Charlie, sort of, how do they both fit in the side? Like, what does Saul offer that van de Beek doesn't, and sort of vice versa? To me, they seem like pretty similar players.
Yeah, well, the Donny van de Beek thing, I'm just a bit fed up of it now, really, the treatment of van de Beek. But I think Saul is a better player to sit, I think. I think Donny van de Beek is more of an 8. I don't think Donny van de Beek is a 10. I don't really. Well, he might be a 10. He might have played there for Ajax, but he's never going to get in ahead of Bruno under Ollie. Bruno's never going to be dropped ever. Like, even if Bruno, had a drop 10 games in a row where he didn't score, he's never going to get dropped. So I think Donny van de Beek's never going to get in as a 10. So obviously he can get in as an 8, but obviously if we don't sign a CDM, then he's going to stick with this so-called double pivot. And people also don't think he can play the pivot. Now, I think he can play that pivot role. I think we've seen it before. I think he can play that role. I think people forget. I've seen comments like McTominay is a 6. McTominay isn't a 6 either. None of them are 6s. They're all 8s. I mean, just because he's big and strong doesn't mean he's a 6. I think that's what people sometimes get mixed up with. But I think they're different sorts of players. I think Saul is more of a better 6, and I think Donny van de Beek is more of an 8. I think Donny vacates that sort of midfield area at times to have more of a roaming role, to make spaces, to play 1-2s. And obviously that is a risk because it leaves a hole. But obviously, if we want to go and win a title, we're going to have to take risks. And McTominay's best attribute, and I agree with Henry, I'm not a big fan of McTominay. Doesn't mean I've got an agenda against him. I just don't rate him that highly. But the best thing about McTominay is his runs forward into the box. He's very strong. And if he has scored a lot of goals, sort of for a more sitting 6, apparently playing in this 4-2-3-1, he scores a lot of goals when he goes forward. Really, for a player who I don't think is that good technically, I think he does have quite a good attribute of scoring goals. But I don't think it's one or the other with Saul or Van de Beek. I think they should both be. If we sign Saul, I think they should both be used. I think obviously Saul, Pogba, and Bruno as a midfield 3 would be, if Saul did come, would probably be people's choice. But as I said before, I think Saul is a better 6 than Donny van de Beek is. But I think Donny van de Beek, for me, I would prefer him to play more of an 8 role. And I think they are different. I think Saul defensively is better. I think his defensive position is better. He's got better defensive stats if you look, I think. But Donny does offer. The thing is with Donny, like his stats, if you look at Donny's stats, they don't look that impressive, but it's not all obviously, of course, about stats. If you actually watch the game, you see the positions he takes up, his build-up play and stuff like this. And also on the point that Henry said about Rashford and Pogba, I've been preparing a tweet and I'm going to tweet it at some point. We all know what's going to happen, no matter how well. I think we're such a better team when Pogba plays on the left, by the way. That's just my personal opinion. I think we wouldn't have got to the Europa League final without it. I think if you look, obviously, at the goal he scored against AC Milan, I don't know whether he was playing on the left in that game when he came on, but obviously the goal he scored was sort of from a left sort of wing position when he just flicked it in at the near post. And then the Europa League semi-final first leg against Roma, Pogba, Bruno, Cavani in the second half. Rashford was non-existent. Pogba was on that left-hand side. And obviously the first 2 games of the season, I tweeted this out. I said, without Pogba, we probably wouldn't have beaten Leeds. We may have just beaten them, but who could have provided that pass to Greenwood? Who would have provided that assist for Bruno's first goal? Like, I don't think any of our other players could do that. And then obviously his assist for Greenwood in the Southampton game, would anybody else would have been able to, that tight control? I'm not so sure. So without Pogba, we could be sitting with 1 or 2 points right now, or even 3. And I think that with Pogba in the team, we've seen Bruno's play is so much better. Bruno doesn't try those so-called hero balls as well. and Bruno doesn't try impossible passes that we know he does, and he doesn't throw his arms around as often. When he plays with Pogba, he does shorter passes. He takes less risks, which I like. I think it's better for the team. So yeah, when Pogba, I know we're sidetracking a bit now, but when Rashford comes back, we all know Pogba's either going to be dropped or he's going to be put into a midfield 3 or 2 or whatever. But if I was, and I know I'm not Ollie, but we all know Ollie, even if Rashford went and killed someone, he'd still be on the left-hand side. He would always be on the left-hand side every single time. He's never going to get dropped there. So I just don't know. I would keep Pogba there if we sign a CDM, and then I would play Saul and Van der Beek, Saul and McTominay, Van der Beek, whatever you want to do, with Bruno at 10, and I would play Pogba on the left, Greenwood or Sancho on the right, and obviously Cavani up front, or Greenwood up front with Sancho on the right, whatever you want to do. But obviously, if we do sign that CDM, I'm going to finish up in a minute because I know I'm going on for a while. But if we do sign that CDM, obviously that gives us more of a chance to play one sitter, and then we could play Pogba and Bruno in a 4-3-3, and then obviously Rashford could then come in on the left. But I don't think Ollie's going to play a 4-3-3. I said this before the season started. I think everyone got a bit carried away. This man is a liar. He said before Donny's going to be involved. He never plays. Donny's going to be important for us. He never plays. He said before the Southampton game, Varane and Sancho, are they going to start? Oh, yeah, I think so. And they don't play. This 4-3-3, I don't think it's ever going to happen. So, yeah, for me, Sal definitely is a completely different player than Van der Beek.
Fair enough. Well, talking of Van der Beek, then we're getting a few comments in as well about him. Henry, if Saul does come in, what happens to Van der Beek? Because he's not getting anywhere near enough game time as it is. I think he's been serially underused by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, given his abilities and given our struggles with breaking down low blocks. I think he's probably going to be, if we used him, he'd be one of our best players in breaking down a low block. So if Sal comes in, what do you do with him? Because you can't. This is a bloke who was nominated for a Ballon d'Or a couple of seasons ago, and now he's rotting on the bench at the age of 24, and you know, another season like that could ruin his career. So what happens with him?
Oh God, this is tough, man. I'm honestly devastated for him. Like, I really am. He's a fantastic player. He's more than capable. If you put him in City side, happy days, because you know they're a side that are capable of sitting on the edge of the box and picking you apart. One thing I will mention ever so quickly, I don't understand this obsession with two midfielders in one box-to-box and one holding. I don't understand it at all, or two DMs. I don't get it. City play one, and then they play De Bruyne and Foden, or De Bruyne and Gundogan in front. Why couldn't we just get a specialist defensive midfielder? You probably need a Bissouma for that kind of role, because you know he plays that sort of role for Brighton, and play two in front with Bruno with Bruno and Pogba. I can't understand that, because you know Pogba would be able to free roam and find space as De Bruyne does for City, and the same would apply to Bruno, who is, you know, Gundogan does the same. Find space in the box, or you know, when the opposition have the ball, press really high, and you know they don't play a defensive formation because they are so good at pressing. When they lose the ball, it's back with them within 5-6 seconds usually. I think their limit, you know, with sides like that, the limit is about 8 seconds. They want the ball back within that space of time, so they just hound you. So again, I don't understand why we can't play that sort of formation. But we're missing one piece, a defensive midfielder. And if you play that formation, you can put Van der Beek in the side because he's good at breaking teams down. I mean, Ajax were not a bum team that came up from the Eerste Divisie, who, you know, the second league in Dutch football. They're top and they sit and they break teams down. I'm fed up of seeing this, you know, constantly too, because two defensive midfielders is pointless. You know, you've got one that does nothing. So again, I feel sorry for him. I think he'll leave. I think he'll leave probably on a loan deal. I would have thought at the moment. I just can't see him staying. If he's not going to be guaranteed to play 35 games, 40 games a season, I can't see him staying. And I think the rotation option with him, if you played a bit of a tweaked formation, would be ideal, because you've still got EFL Cup, FA Cup, Champions League, and Premier League to be competing in. So you've got plenty of competitions. So yeah, kind of rotating him with Pogba and Bruno, and then if you get an injury, the problem with us is if we get an injury, it goes from, we'll take, McTominay's slightly injured at the moment. I know he's been left out of the Scotland squad because of a little recurring injury. But if you take McTominay out, put Van der Beek in, but no, it's always ends up with Matic or something, someone who is struggling with legs. Like footballer struggling to run is a big problem, and he's still playing over Donny van der Beek. I don't know. I just, again, this comes down to management, and I know people are going to hound me for this, but this comes down to management. It's basic management. I'm sorry, it is. If you've got a quality side, it's not as though Pogba and Bruno are going to sit there and go, he's just run past me. Damn, can't be bothered to run back, really. It's a bit of effort, isn't it? They're not going to do that. If you put them in a role where they're more attacking and more kind of free roaming, they will have to do the dirty work, and they will do it. We saw Pogba do it against Leeds. So we can play all of these players in a team. I have no doubt about it whatsoever. But we've got to change the style of play to more of a 4-3-3, which, again, Charlie's right. Ollie has completely lied to us about that. It might happen at some point, but he has completely lied. He's gone, we've been working this formation. Yeah, we'll switch it up. It'll be fantastic. Donny's going to have a really big part to play. 0 minutes in 2 games. 0 minutes. 0 minutes against a Southampton side that was sat in the low block. Like, if you punch the manager in the face, he still wouldn't realise what he was missing. Seriously, like, honest. It's just, yeah. I hope it works out for us this season. I really hope it works out for us, and I really hope that we switch formation and we start going more attacking. But he's too worried about losing games, and you've got to take. Ferguson was the best at taking risks to win games rather than drawing it. So. Yeah, I feel sorry. Again, I feel sorry for Van der Beek, and I think for his sake, he should go on a loan, or if he really wants to leave on a permanent deal, I would not blame him whatsoever, because it's another case of false promises, and the idea that people are now saying he wasn't a Solskjaer signing. Bullshit. I'm sorry, I'm not having that. I'm not having that whatsoever. You're telling me that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has a say in Maguire, Wan-Bissaka, Sancho, Varane, but doesn't have a say in Van der Beek? Are you mad? Of course he has a say in it. It's his player, but he's done a Jose on him. People don't want to admit that.
Yeah. I'm probably one of Ollie's biggest fans. I think he's doing a good job, but I completely agree that if the coaching was better, we probably wouldn't need a DM, because the tenacity and ball winning ability that Fred naturally has. If you can coach some sort of responsibility into him and some discipline, so he's not trying to close people down on the edge of the opposition box rather than holding his position near the halfway line, then that he could be our solution to that DM. But I think that he's 27, 28 now. I think that ship sailed to try and teach any sort of responsibility into him. So then you have to have a midfielder next to him, just in case he goes off on a walkabout again. But yeah, coaching needs to improve. I think that this is a potential league winning side with the right responsibility and the right coaching drilled into it. But sharing about Donny van der Beek, just finally then to wrap us off on Saul, alternatives. Obviously, a lot of people aren't too over the moon at the fact that our new much needed holding midfielder isn't that great defensively. He's obviously not one of the best in the world that we're sort of looking for at winning the ball back. So Henry, I know you're a massive fan of Basuma, so I'll leave your little rant to about him for a second. But Charlie, who Who did you want to get in? Obviously, we had Camavinga and Neves also on the list, and I don't think either of those are going to happen. So, was there anyone you wanted in more than Saul?
To be honest with you, I think any of, obviously, and DD, Rice. Obviously, first let's start with Rice. I totally agree with Henry. Rice is. I said throughout the Euros, I thought Rice is very, very good at screening a back four, back five, whatever you want to call it. But somebody made a comment the other day, I think, about England. It's totally true. For a lot of the time, England came up against some poor sides. Obviously, you have to beat what you're up against, but we had obviously quite a poor group. And obviously, we came up against Germany. I was surprised they were so poor. And then obviously Denmark, Ukraine, etc. But England defended very, very deep. And when we went 1-0 up, we were very, very, it sort of suited Rice. I think that's what he has at West Ham. I think if you watch the West Ham Leicester game the other night, before the red card for Ayoze Perez, Leicester were in control of a lot of possession, but West Ham were just sitting quite deep and counter-attacking. And that's perfect for Rice. Can he do that in a team that wants to be possession-based, in a team that wants to go at teams? Obviously, the main job of a big job of a CDM in a possession-based side, as Henry said about obviously Rodri at Man City, is to stop the counter-attack. Can Rice do that? I'm not so sure. I think when you pass Rice, I don't think he's going to catch you. I just think he's so slow. I just don't think he's mobile enough. I really don't. And who else is obviously you've got Ndidi's unrealistic. I said that from the start. No way we're going to sign him. Leicester won't sell him for less than 75, 80. Bissouma, fantastic player. Really, really good player, Bissouma. I'd be very happy with Bissouma, Neves, Saul, any midfielder. I'm happy with. What I want to see is how that midfielder works and gets coached, and the rest of the team gets coached into a system. I'm very much an advocate of a system, and I think that Man United, we have great individuals. I think we obviously finished ahead of Chelsea and Liverpool last season. I have my reasons why. Obviously, we finished second. We did do well, but obviously Chelsea, Liverpool, you have to take into account the circumstances. But if you actually look at the system and the way that our team plays as a team compared to City, Chelsea, and Liverpool, we are far behind those teams, in my opinion, in terms of the way we play. We may get more points than some of those teams throughout the season. We may beat those teams in one-off games. But in terms of sustaining that in the big competitions, I don't think we can do it, just because I think the way we play is unsustainable. I just don't think you can rely on certain individuals to produce moments. And people say, do we rely on individual brilliance, etc.? I think we do. I think there obviously is some coaching. Ollie doesn't have zero tactics. Of course, he has some tactics. He's done very well at times. But it's not Ollie's fault at all. It's not the coaching staff. These are the people who are supposed to be coaching, and I just don't think they're good enough. So yeah, I really want a midfielder. I'm really not bothered who it is. Obviously, if you're going to say trying to think of a really, really bad midfield player now. If you're going to say somebody like, I don't know, James McArthur or something from Crystal Palace, obviously no. But obviously, if you're talking about Saul, Neves, Bissouma, even Declan Rice, I'd be happy with Declan Rice. He's just not one of my preferences. But any midfielder of that ilk, I'll be happy with. But the most important thing is, then what do we do with that midfielder? You don't just shove him in and say, oh, go out there, show a bit of passion, go out there and perform. They need to be coached. They need to get used to the players they're playing with. And we need this squad to be rotated and get used to playing with each other. Because I think Donny van de Beek, a big thing about Donny van de Beek is people have said he hasn't performed at United, but he's been given the odd chance. He's been given odd matches, often in games that are dead rubber or, games that nobody really cares about. And he's been put around poor players. And even we saw with Luke Shaw, when Maguire got injured, he was put next to Bailly or Lindelof, and he wasn't playing with Maguire for a lot of games and for a few games towards the end of the season. And he was really struggling. You need to get used to who you're playing around. You need to form triangles, form combinations with each other. And I really agree with that point by John, by the way. I think a lot of rival fans see it better than we do. A lot of United fans at times. I think a lot of people find any way not to blame Ollie for something. And I give Ollie praise when he does well. I'm not a bias, and I criticize him when he doesn't do well. But there are some people that, like, there's always an excuse, as Harry said. There will always be an excuse for Ollie. There always will. Like last season, it was Rashford injury. We had nobody to bring on in the Europa League final. The players aren't good enough. There's no CDM. There's no winger. There's no this, that, the other. And there's always an excuse. You know, Chelsea won the Champions League without a very good striker. Manchester City won the league without a left back. Zinchenko was redefined into a left back. I'm trying to think of other ones now. There's a few others as well. But, you know, Chelsea, I can't remember. I was going to do another on Man City. There's another one without a striker. Gundogan isn't a striker, but he played in. Pep Guardiola got into playing a false nine. Like, players are not restricted to what they've done before. Donny van de Beek can play on the wing as far as I'm concerned. He's got great intelligence. He can play as sort of like the Pogba role at Juventus that he played in. He can play in that sort of role. He can play in so many different roles. Players are not restricted to certain roles. So bring in a CDM, fantastic, but they need to be coached, and the coaching needs to improve on the whole.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. It goes back to my point about Fred. I think if he went to City, I think he'd probably have already taken Fernandinho's role, and he'd maybe be doing just as well. I think he's got the attributes to do it. It's just up there. Guardiola would have drilled it into him by now, but yeah, it's a difficult one. Henry, I'll give you 2 minutes max. Talk about Bissouma to us then.
Just a very tenacious, quality player. You know, I personally think a Rolls Royce of a midfielder. He can do pretty much everything, and he plays. I know he plays for Brighton, but he plays for a possession-based side, a side who are, you know, more than capable of winning the ball back. They win the ball back quickly every time they lose it, and you know, his interceptions and, you know, even his progressive stats have gone up this year just because of the players that he's playing with. So yeah, again, just a quality player, and he also brings along a really good chant that I'd love to hear ring round Old Trafford. You should
go on. Go on.
I'm not going to chant it. But you should look it up.
Come on.
No. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because I'll look like a tit if I do it.
No, it's a bit late for that, mate.
Yeah, I know, but even more of a tit. It wouldn't make much of a difference, but yeah. So if you look at that, look at it, because, you know, we're talking about the Cavani chance and stuff. This is top tier. This is levels above that. So, but yeah, just a quality player. Charlie's mentioned it. You know, brings everything to the table that you want in terms of, you know, abilities to keep the ball, and I think that if we don't get him, Liverpool will be snooping around him. I mean, Arsenal think they're going to get him. Good one. You know, you struggle to get Ben White. You paid 50 million for Ben White. But Brighton will go, right, 100 million for Bissouma. They'll go, yeah, why not? No, so I think again, and we can get him because they've got a ready-made replacement in Caicedo, who just played yesterday. So, and I know me and James, we've done a podcast on Caicedo individually, and you know, from what we heard, he's a fantastic player, but he is another Bissouma. So if they lose him, they've got ready-made replacements. So 35, 40 million, if you've got the opportunity, do it, because he'll completely change their side. And you know, he plays in a similar system to what we want to play, what us fans want to play. With Rice, he plays alongside another player in midfield, which is a Fred McTominay situation all over again. So, you know, he's not alone in that DM role, whereas Bissouma is. So, yeah.
So to summarise then, would you take Bissouma over Saul in an ideal world?
100%. I'd take him over anyone. I'd take him over Saul, I'd take him over Neves, and I'd take him over Rice. I'd definitely take him over Rice. I think Rice is
fair
a
enough.
Little bit overrated, personally. But
fair enough. Well, we'll give ourselves 10 minutes to look ahead to the Wolves game then. Obviously, we'll split it into two parts. What needs to change from Southampton? I'll ask you both that first. You first, Charlie. What needs to change from Southampton, whether it's personnel, tactics, what do you want to see?
Oh dear God. I think we've got to obviously Varane and Sancho have got to start. That's the first thing. So I imagine it'd be De Gea in goal, Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Maguire, Shaw, I imagine, and then let's skip the midfield for a minute because that's obviously the bit that's going to create debate. And obviously you cannot drop Pogba. So you've got Pogba, Bruno, Sancho, and then obviously you'd expect Greenwood as the number 9. So then you've got those 2 midfield positions. Now, the end of last season, obviously Wolves have changed manager, they've changed system. Against Tottenham the other day, I watched on Match of the Day. They created more chances. They had more possession than Tottenham. They were unlucky to lose, really. They should have put the chances away. Now, at the end of last season, Matic and Van der Beek worked very, very well against Wolves. And it's because they're slightly more passive side under Nuno. Now, under Bruno Lage, they want to try and play a more expansive style of play. So it will be, if McTominay is fit, it will be Henry's favourite. It will be McTominay and Fred. I'm 99% sure that is the midfield he'll go with. And to be honest with you, I think we will probably. I don't know. I would start Matic and Van der Beek. That's just my personal preference. And I know Matic had a very poor game on Sunday or whatever it was when we had that horror show. But I just think that Matic. I agree that he cannot play every game, but I think that sort of game, I just thought that everybody was poor. You know, Matic and Fred were running into the same zones. It was just, we just didn't have, Maguire and Lindelof just didn't have anything to play. It was just like Maguire and Lindelof were just getting the ball, doing a McTominay sort of, as Henry said, just look sideways and passing it to the next man there. So yeah, it was really, really poor. So I would play Matic and Van der Beek, but he will play McTominay and Fred. But what needs to change generally, we just need to start games better. You know, away from home last season, we were very, very poor, in particular in the first half. And I've said this for this season, with the home crowds back in, our away record could go very, very soon if we don't wake up and start games quicker. Because this is a Wolves team who we always struggle against. Let's be honest. I can't remember since Ollie's took over, you may correct me, I can't remember any easy game we've had against Wolves. I really can't. I think it's always been a gritty sort of 1-0, 0-0, 2-1. It's always been very tight.
I think even that first time we played Wolves under Mourinho as well, before he left, it was 1-1 at Old Trafford, wasn't it? And it was a horrible game.
Was it Fred scored that?
Fred scored, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's always a bit of a nasty game up down at Wolves, I suppose, from Manchester. But it's always a bit of a gritty game at Wolves. I've got a feeling we might lose on Sunday, and I don't want to be negative, but I think we're going to get beat on Sunday. I just think we may struggle. I really do. We have to turn up. We really do. Ollie's under huge pressure. The Ollie out brigade, I don't associate with any Ollie in out doubts. I'm in my sort of own. I don't really have I have an opinion, but I don't really get involved with that debate. But the Ollie outs brigade have already started since that Southampton game. And if we lose to Wolves, Ollie is under some pressure. I'll tell you that now. People are really, the tide is turning, not just on that game, but people are starting to see some problems. So it's a huge game for Ollie on Sunday. I think we'll struggle with Neves, Jimenez, Moutinho. I think we'll lose the midfield battle if we play McTominay and Fred. Personally, I would play Matic and Van der Beek. But let's hope we win. Let's hope we obviously see Varane and Sancho. But I wouldn't be surprised if Varane doesn't start again. I don't know. Gary Neville, who made a load of ludicrous comments on Monday night, or whatever the bollocks show is called. He said, Varane, Varane is watching to see what the Premier League is like. He's watching to see what the Premier League is like. What load of bollocks? Watching to see what's he watching for? He could sit at home if he's on the bench. What's he doing? He should be straight in the team. But anyway, enough of the brand. We'll win 5-0 on Sunday. There you go.
That's more like it, Charlie. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's more likely that Varane will start than Sancho. Actually, I think, I don't know why. I've just got an inkling feeling that Sancho could have a bit of a stop-start season in terms of appearances. But Henry, just briefly, what do you want to see change? Because one personal thing I want to see is moving Greenwood back to that number 9 position. So I have nothing against Martial. I actually don't think he did bad against Southampton. I just think he's still missing that yard of pace that we know he has. And I think we saw that he had a couple of decent opportunities where if he was just a little bit quicker or a little bit more on the ball, then he probably would have scored from it. We all know he had the ability to do that. So I think he probably needs a little bit more time, move Greenwood back into that middle. But yeah, other than that, what are you thinking?
Well, I've got a little bit of a different take on that. I think Martial was shit, personally. I really do. Like his lack of movement, he didn't want to receive the ball. I think he didn't receive the ball as a holding player at all, trying to hold the defenders up. And I just think he was a bit crap, really. And I don't have a problem with players having bad games, but it was a lack of desire. It was you know what he's like. He's misery guts when things don't go well for him in the first 15 minutes of games. He turns into a right knob and he acts like a child. So and things didn't go well for him. So we saw childish, grumpy Martial, as we've seen many a time. And I thought he was terrible. But I thought most of the team were, to be fair. I mean, you can't really get much worse than the Southampton game. You can't really downgrade. Matic. I thought everyone was poor, to be fair. I want to see Varane start. Lindelof was wow. I mean, after the Leeds game, I thought, okay, this guy maybe he's actually fighting for his place. He was just garbage. He was struggling, and I want to see that Varane-Maguire partnership. And Charlie's right. Gary Neville? What's this bollocks with Gary Neville talking about? Oh yeah. Let me just sit him on a bench so he can watch the Premier League. He's a multiple Champions League winner. He's not a bloody 2-year-old. You have to spoon feed him his dinner as well. It's embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. So I'm not buying that crap. I'm sorry, Lukaku. Straight in the side when he joins. I get the idea of betting a player in. I get it. But he's not there to watch the Premier League. Fuck me, God. It's just a stupid, ridiculous, biased, retarded take, if I'm completely honest. And I'm sorry I use that word, but I'm going to use it because it's just Gary Neville is he's just trying to protect his best buddy. That's all he's doing. So Varane, Maguire, De Gea, obviously, but we need to have a coach behind the goal to when a cross comes in to bloody shove him into the 18-yard box, which he comes and collects something for once, because he didn't catch any crosses during that game. He just shouts away. Well, that's not very helpful, is it?
Well, do you know what? It's good you mentioned that. I've been thinking recently, the more you can hear players on TV, why do they shout away? Is that not a given? If you don't shout, if you don't shout away, people aren't going to head it. They're going to go, "Oh, might leave this one because you didn't tell me what to do."
Yeah, with a keeper, having played that role for a few years, you've got to always have constant communication. You've got to shout away because they might hesitate if you don't shout away. The players, if you don't communicate, they'll turn around and go, "You didn't communicate with me." And it's like, well, cool, but you didn't talk to me either. But so you've got to shout away or you've got to shout keepers. But the problem with De Gea is he never shouts keepers because he never collects the ball. He never comes out for the ball. What was it? The ball came over the top in the first half, and he just stood there. It was like, and everyone's like, "Hello, why are you still in your goal line? Why don't you come out 10 yards and then you can actually come out and be a sweeper?" So, and this is another thing, James, with the talking. You can shout keeper's ball or stuff, but you can never shout mine because you get booked. I did it once when I was 17 and I got booked for shouting mine. You can hear my voice. You know it's me. I'm 6'4". You know it's me. Honestly, stupid. Cost me a tenner, that crap. So, yeah. Midfield, Charlie's right. It's going to be McTominay and Fred. Even if McTominay's got... If he's on crutches, it will still be him in midfield. And then... similar front line, not Martial, definitely not Martial, and Greenwood. Greenwood up front. I want to see Greenwood up front because I thought he was fantastic. He plays that role so well. He's growing into a striker, and as we said before, next year, if he does well this year, next year, bum off the idea of getting Haaland and negotiating with an idiot with Raiola. He's going to ask for the keys to your house and your mother's bank account details. So tell him to do one. So yeah, again, it's a we could win, we could lose. This is United, and yeah, I have just seen that as well.
That's proper Michael Owen analysis. That is, we could win, we could lose.
No, seriously, I don't know what we're going to get though with United this Sunday. I don't know what we're going to get. We could get a fantastic United side that come out and go and score 3 goals in the first 10 minutes. We could get a United side that slack off and the crowd get up and Wolves win 1-0. You just don't know what you're gonna get, and again, it depends on a little bit of brilliance. Those Pogba assists, I can assure you one thing: those Pogba assists that you got, those 4 assists, were not pre-planned by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It was just hero ball up to your strikers and Fernandes running in. And you know what, Skeptic, I would love to see that. I would love to see Fred and Pogba in midfield, but it won't be. I'd love to see Pogba making driving runs forward for once, like from a midfield role, because that's what you're going to have to do in the future if Rashford's playing. So, but I think he'll go safe again. I just hope Varane can sort out our defensive problems with Lindelof's good, but he's really short. Like, it's like someone stuck Varane in a big compressor and stuck him on the pitch. He's a midget version of Varane and not quite as quick. So hopefully we'll see us push up 5 yards as well.
Dear me, honestly. Other news as well that I've seen, Manchester Evening News, since we've been on air, have released an article from Donny van der Beek's agent saying that Van der Beek's happy with the assurances Solskjaer's given him this year, and he's 100% committed to staying. So maybe there is more in place for him. I'll believe it when I see it, but
I was hoping they'd mould him.
Said that.
I was hoping over the season last season, on a serious note, that they were going to mould him into like a defensive midfielder. That there was, he said there was a year plan, Solskjaer. Yeah, we've got a year plan. We'll just develop him and he'll be a main part of the side next year. I was hoping we'd mould him into that kind of 6 role. But he hasn't played. And he didn't really play that much in pre-season. This agent, he's either really smart and has had really, helpful conversations with the manager himself. I know he's going off press releases, which Solskjaer's saying in, press conferences or whatever. But he might just be a little bit ditzy and stupid, like this agent. No, in all honesty, he hasn't played a minute this season, and he's going, I'm happy with the assurances that my player isn't going to play at all this year. I just don't get it. I don't get it at all. I'd be hounding Solskjaer if I were him, saying, you paid 35 million for him. What is he doing on the bench? And if we don't see him against Wolves, I think he's gone. Seriously. Don't see him at all against Wolves. I think forget it. Personally, he's get him out on loan or something. Get him some actual game time rather than just sitting on the bench, because it's not fair on him anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we are over the hour mark, so that sort of brings an end to our podcast. A massive thank you to Charlie, especially, for joining us, and Henry as well, as ever. So brilliant to have you on, Charlie. Looking forward to having you on again as well, if you're up for it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on, boys.
So no worries. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We had a lot of comments in today. It was really good to see. Thank you for getting involved. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like and subscribe. And until next week, we'll see you next time.